So here we go. Welcome to the second episode of your Manchester United Fix with myself, Ben Ibsen, and my co-host, Brad Cox. Well, let's get straight into it. I don't think yesterday's game needs any introduction. If you don't know what happened, then where have you been? I mean, where to start? Varane being announced before kickoff, a Bruno hat-trick, Pogba 4 assists, Sancho debut, or just beating rivals Leeds United 5-1 on the opening day of the season. Brad, take it away.
I mean, Ben, you've summarised it really. It was one of those perfect days for Manchester United fans, for everyone involved at the club, to start the Premier League season with a 5-1 victory over these rivals that have been, getting quietly confident over the past 2 weeks that they were going to pull off a victory at Old Trafford. And it wasn't a Leeds side that was particularly missing players like Manchester United were. And I think that's why many believed that Leeds were going to end up coming away with a point, but that wasn't to be. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer got it spot on in terms of his team selection. Many were calling for Jadon Sancho to start. Obviously, that did not happen. And it turns out they didn't really need him either. I mean, the goals in itself were just superb. Bruno Fernandes, like you mentioned there, hat-trick on the opening day. But for me, it was all about Paul Pogba. 4 assists. I mean, on the first game of the season, to beat your tally of assists from last season in 58 minutes or whatever it was, it's just ridiculous. But for me, yeah, Bruno will steal the headlines, and rightly so. But Paul Pogba was the key to it all for me.
If I'm right in thinking, Bruno is the first player to have scored a hat-trick on the opening game of the season since Lou Macari did it. I can't remember the year. Stuart told me the stat. But that is absolutely fantastic. To have someone to do that on the first game of the season. I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said that United were missing players. And they can still do that without Marcus, without Edinson. And to do that 5-1 on the opening game of the season. Let's not get carried away, by the way, because we will play teams that are a lot more defensively set up than Leeds are and a lot more tough to beat. But what a start to the season.
Yeah, it was excellent. And, it's also fitting that it was against Leeds United because, in a way, Bruno Fernandes has had the same impact on this Manchester United team that Eric Cantona had on his Manchester United team back in the 90s. So, it's fitting in that way. But, yeah, excellent way to get started off to the season for Manchester United and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So they're top of the league.
And there's been talks of Bruno signing a new contract. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, well, Fabrizio Romano has said on Twitter that the club are in talks with Fernandes over a new contract, and rightly so. He's one of the few players, I believe, that deserve a new contract at Manchester United at the minute. We all know the situation regarding Paul Pogba and his contract. Getting into his last year and not signing a new one is a pretty big deal. He could go on a free for a second time next summer, and the United's board will not want that to happen to Bruno Fernandes, and it won't happen. They will seal a deal with the contract, and I'd expect it to be quite a big pay rise, not just to keep him there, but to show him he's worth what they are paying. Because in the past few years, especially 5-6 years. Manchester United have been known for handing out these ginormous contracts, and that's why they've been struggling so much to get rid of the players that they arguably need to move on, like the likes of Andreas Pereira and Phil Jones, etc. But yeah, Bruno, I think his contract will be up and coming with a new one. It's just a matter of time, really, when it gets done. They're in no rush. He's still got a couple of years left on it, but they'd like to get it done sooner rather than later.
Well, that's one thing I like about this situation so much, is that sometimes these big money contracts get offered to keep a player at the club. But in Bruno's situation, he looks like he's enjoying himself so much at Manchester United that he don't want to go anywhere else, or he's not going to be attracted by a big offer to go elsewhere, because he's absolutely loving his football. And that's one of the best things. I saw the picture with Paul and Bruno in the changing rooms, and Bruno's like this, injects it into his veins, and Paul's loving it. And that's what you want. He looks like a type of player that his energy rubs off on other players, rather than sitting there quiet in the dressing room, performs on the pitch, and that's it. You don't hear from him afterwards. He sounds like he's just constant energy. He's ongoing and ongoing. It's rubbing off on the likes of Paul Pogba, who, moving on to his performance, we've seen him do that. We've seen him do that for France. We've seen him do it at Juventus. And he's shown glimpses of doing it for Manchester United. And you sometimes think, well, is he going to get into the rhythm of doing it week in, week out? Where's he going to fit to the squad? All this. But yesterday, to get 4 assists, and it's not like they were just tap-ins or sort of just a little pass and the player went on and did all the work on their own. These are unbelievable passes. The one for Greenwood's goal was a great pass.
Yeah, I mean, it was, you kind of said everything there that needed to be said about Paul Pogba. He's done it before. He's done it for Manchester United. He's done it for France. But it's now not just about doing it. It's about doing it consistently. That's what Paul Pogba needs to do in a Manchester United shirt. I wrote about it a lot last season. Before his injury, at the Burnley game, the Fulham game, he was pulling off these performances consistently, and he was single-handedly, along with a little bit of help from Bruno, he was carrying Manchester United to a bit of a title race last season. But you'll notice as soon as he suffered that injury last year, the form completely dipped. But so that's one thing, is keeping Paul Pogba fit this season, but also keeping him happy. And like you said, him and Bruno in the changing rooms, they could not look happier, could they really?
Absolutely not. And I'm right in thinking that no other Manchester United player has got 4 assists in one Premier League match.
Yeah, I think
that's correct.
That's correct. Yeah, that is correct. 4 assists in one Premier League match is a remarkable stat, really. Because everyone focuses on goals too much, but it's equally as much about creating them. And that kind of leads me to, I think, our next discussion about Victor Lindelof's assist, because that was superb. I mean, that is one of those balls. We've seen this from Lindelof before as well, with those balls from the back over the top for either Marcus Rashford last year. It happened quite a few times. I think it was Sheffield United away last season was one of those fantastic balls over the top for Rashford to put behind into the back of the net. But it happened again. And I think that was for Bruno's third. I think it might have been for Bruno's third. But the superb ball from Victor Lindelof, and his replacement has already signed. But is it going to be an Alex Telles effect? Is it going to mean that Victor Lindelof starts pulling off some unbelievable performances and Raphael Varane can't make it into the squad? I mean, what a story that would be. I mean, I think it's quite far from happening, that. But if it is to be Varane starting over Lindelof, then United have got themselves a solid backup in Victor Lindelof, in case Varane was to pick up an injury, or heaven forbid for Manchester United's sake, Harry Maguire was to pick up a little.
Well, that's it, and that's what excites me the most about these kind of signings. When you sign a top class player, it almost takes the whole squad to that next level, because it means they have to fight for their positions, and it's not being complacent, playing football week in, week out, where they're put 100% in anyway. But they've got to go above and beyond to prove that they deserve this position. And like you say, with the Telles, Luke Shaw has come on leaps and bounds. It's the same with Lingard. Lingard went out to West Ham. He had to show what he has to get into this Manchester United team. He did exactly that. And when you do that, and then he said if you pick up injuries or things happen during the seasons, you have these players that come through and they're no longer what they were like a season or two ago. They've stepped up their game. I mean, imagine in training is ridiculous nowadays, with all these players trying to outdo each other. And it just sets the bar so high for the season, every player in the squad. And that's what excites me the most about this team.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, it's the training that's going to be giving Ole Gunnar Solskjaer a little bit of a headache for his team selection. I mean, if he is to continue with this 3 up top, which is most likely, he's got plenty of options to choose from. He's got so many players in there. He's got Rashford, Sancho, Greenwood, Cavani, and Elanga's now on the scene. Martial's back from injury. There's only 3 spots up for grabs. Well, Pogba played on the left wing, so maybe that's one of the keys to this next phase of play in Manchester United's season, is keeping Paul Pogba out on the left, because McFred doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
Well, I know that you are very impressed with these two midfielders yesterday, and I know we've got a lot of questions being asked about defensive midfielders or the formations that we should play and things like that, which we can get to in due course. But let's talk about Fred and McTominay, because personally I thought McTominay was absolutely outstanding yesterday. The way he plays his football, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and everything he does is 100% to push United for the win. It's incredible.
I think it also, with McTominay as well, you know what you're getting in him. You know he's going to do the job each week. I think he's going to break up play. He's going to get stuck in. He's not soft by any means. He's definitely one of those tough midfielders that you don't really want to be coming into a 50-50 challenge with. It happened quite a few times with Leeds' midfield. Scott was getting properly stuck in on Saturday. And the McFred double pivot has been talked about so much, especially over the past 5 to 6 months, about talking about getting rid of that pivot and only sticking with one of them. But the thing is, they complement each other's games so well. When one of them goes diving in, the other one drops back and covers them. But what I found impressive and a slightly slight tweak to the system on Saturday was McTominay was getting a lot further forward than last season. He had that, almost like he had the license to go forward from Solskjaer. But the thing is with McTominay and Fred is it gives that sort of comfort for Fernandes to go bombing forward in a way. And I think it almost ends up playing, like on Saturday, it almost ended up being with Fernandes and Greenwood almost playing as two strikers and Fernandes joining up to them and making a 4 across the front rather than just Fernandes sitting in front of the two holding midfielders. It was almost like it was McTominay and Fred in the middle, and then he had Pogba on the left and James on the right, Greenwood on the right side of the strike force, and then Fernandes on the left, and he was having that free roam, and that caused so many issues for Leeds at the back. They didn't know whether Fernandes was going to come in behind them, drop into the pocket in front of their front line of defence. They had no clue what to do with Bruno Fernandes, but that comes from Scott and Fred being there to give Fernandes that comfort and license to bomb forward.
Exactly, and Bruno's a player as well that if he sees a pass, he's not going to second guess it. He's going to play that pass straight away. And yeah, he loses the ball a lot, but like you said, you've got them two behind who win the ball back, give it back to his feet, and he's a player on the pitch that's going to ping them passes. He's going to pick the players out in the little pockets in between the lines, and that's what you need in your team. But it's interesting that you touched on McTominay playing in a bit more of a higher position, because I remember I saw him play for the under-23s probably touching 2 years ago now, and he scored a hat-trick. And I've never seen him. Every time you see him in the first team, he plays that sort of defensive role. He's there because he's big. He'll put the challenges in. He'll win the ball back. He's not afraid of anything. So a totally different player. He was running around everyone. He was sticking the ball in the back of the net. I was so shocked. And that's when I sort of realised that this guy can play. You have people you play in different positions. Like you have fullbacks that can turn into centre midfielders. This guy's a centre midfielder who can play with the ball at his feet. And like you said, with Fred next to him, Fred's someone who recycles the ball. He'll win it back. He might not be the best with his feet. Sometimes he'll kick it out of play. And I was watching the game with Danny Webber yesterday. Danny, if you're listening, I know that you're a big fan of Fred. And sometimes he does lose the ball. Sometimes he'll kick it out of play, but he will run and run and run to get it back. And that's like you said, they complement each other so well in that aspect.
Yeah, and also I just want to touch on what you said there. Fred's distribution, I actually thought it was much improved on Saturday. He was picking up the ball in front of that back four and pinging it out wide instantly. And that's what United have been missing in the past couple of years is a player to be able to pick a pass out, clean it up. I like to call it the Michael Carrick role because it goes missing, that role. Lots of people don't notice there's a player doing that, collecting the ball, cleaning up the scraps and firing it out to the width for someone to start the counter-attack. And against the Leeds side that kept bombing forward, that seemed to work perfectly. And just touching on this style of play, it's something that Manchester United fans have not seen in the past 10 years, in the post-Sir Alex Ferguson era. I'm just reading it here. The victory over Leeds was the 10th time they'd scored 5 goals or more under Solskjaer, and they only managed to do that twice under the reigns of David Moyes, Van Gaal and Jose Mourinho combined. So, it's quite a statistic there for you. It's a definitely change in shape and a change of mentality, which I think is key. Not just settling for a 1 or 2 goal lead, going for more. And I think the best example of that last season was obviously the 9-0 against Southampton at home. You notice Scott McTominay screaming at the end to go and get that 9th. When the 8th went in the 90th minute or something, and just to get that 9th goal in added time is just something that's built into you. It's not necessarily a game plan. That's just come from Solskjaer's mindset towards the team.
Yeah, I definitely agree as well. And I think we've got to give credit to Leeds, to be fair, because Ayling's goal was fantastic. But I also think that Manchester United excel when they're playing teams that come out of their shape and they come and attack you. And even at 4-1 down, Leeds was still doing that. And that's why there were so many chances towards the end of the game where gaps opened up and players were across the pitch. And when there were so many chances to score more goals. But that's because Leeds were giving us that space. I think I saw it last season a lot of the time when you play teams that sit back and they know what they're doing. They're sitting back and are waiting to counter you and do that. And that's where United sort of struggle. Maybe not so much this season with the attacking players that we've now got, but that's where you sort of struggle. The ball goes from side to side and side to side. Whereas yesterday, it was end to end because Leeds United just aren't a team that are going to sit back. They're going to run, which leaves gaps. And we exploited them gaps yesterday and took chances.
And I think it's important that you brought up Luke Ayling's goal there, because I don't think that should have been able to happen from a United defensive point of view. He had far too much time. I mean, he had time to not only shout at Dallas to receive the ball, but to then take a touch, get his head up, look at that top left corner, zoom in on it, target in, lock it in, and just let rip from distance. There was, I think...
I missed the goal as well.
Did you? How did you miss it? Too loud?
I couldn't believe it. I heard the crowd. I can't remember what I was doing, but I just heard the crowd and we were 1-0 up and I thought, oh, here we go.
Yeah,
here we go.
Yeah, here they go again. Man United conceding once they're playing really well. But no, just to continue on that though, Ayling's goal, going into that top left corner, I think I was watching it back on TV and there was about 3 or 4 United players either within 5 feet of him, but no one decided to close him down. And I think, that does come with just a bit of rustiness, not into the full match swing of things. But that's got to be sorted sooner rather than later because you cannot be allowing, Ayling's not even known for these sorts of wonder strikes. He pulled off a few. I think his last goal ended up actually winning the Goal of the Year award for Leeds in the Championship on the year that they came up. So, he's got a thunderbolt on him, but he's not a goal scorer. He is a right back at the end of the day. But you can't be giving a professional footballer that much time and space on the ball. You just can't be doing that.
No, exactly. I think the most upsetting thing about that was I had him on the bench in my fantasy football.
He was on my bench as well.
Everyone seems to have had an amazing week in that. Which, if you didn't have Salah or Bruno as your captain, or even in your team, then I think you don't have much chance.
How many points did you end up on?
I think I'm on about 75, which I thought was impressive until I looked at the leagues and everyone's touching 100 and everything like that. But
there are some ridiculous scores. I think I've only just reached the 80s, but still very good week. I'll take that, to be fair, considering I left quite a few players on the bench. But anyway, back to the real life football.
Yeah, well, to be fair, a person that was mentioned a lot in the fantasy football yesterday, I was sat watching with Wes Brown and he has Greenwood in his team. So every time Greenwood got the ball, he was up and he was screaming. And to be fair, what a goal that was.
Yeah, excellent.
What a goal that was. To outpace the defender like that. Yeah, you're just watching it and he was gaining yards, got the ball, running in. The way he took it, left foot in across the keeper into the corner, in front of the Stretford end. I had goosebumps, to be fair, when watching them celebrate that. That was absolutely fantastic.
Does not get better than that if you're a Manchester United fan. That's to regain the lead against your rivals. A wonderful ball from Paul Pogba, bending round the Leeds defence, straight into Greenwood's stride. 1 or 2 long touches for Greenwood to get it out of his feet. And I'm not sure who tweeted it, but someone tweeted, a journalist tweeted it, either this morning or yesterday. It's not about, if you watch it, he doesn't even hit it with his laces. It's not with the instep of his foot either. It's like literally on the edge of his big toe, really. So he's got the pace from the top of the foot, but he's also got the inside of the foot which takes it past Melier, and that's just something you don't really see. You don't see a ball from that kind of direction going across the keeper to get that much speed on it. How many times do you see so many goalkeepers just dive to their left and make that save, whereas this one was just perfectly placed on the inside of the post and it goes in, and that picture of him running down the side of the Stretford end and knee sliding onto the corner flag is just superb. I mean, it could not be much better for Manchester United fans, could it?
Oh, and he nearly took out the lead substitute when he slid as well. I thought that was going to happen for a second. But I know the comparison gets made a lot that he's like a player like Robin van Persie, which isn't a bad comparison to make at all. But you'd agree, the way he plays, the way he hits the ball. It's like you said, you don't see many players hitting the ball like that,
Just
especially
clinical.
on the left foot. So you would say Van Persie. But as a recent player nowadays, you'd say the only player is Harry Kane who strikes the ball like that, who's rumoured to go for £150 million world-class striker to wherever he may go. And you got Mason Greenwood, who's a young lad, come through the ranks. And he's another one who's impressed from the 18s to the 23s, and now he's in the first team, and he's just hit the ground running as if it doesn't faze him.
And it was.
And as well, I think
Go on.
another important aspect is that in front of the fans, some players might not be on the same wavelength as they once were last season because they're not used to it. But I think he just absolutely relished it, and scoring in front of the Stretford end, incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there can't be much better feeling than that, can there, really? But there was also interesting. Solskjaer was talking about him in the press conference afterwards, and he was like, I think he said the words, who said I wanted him to be a starting striker? Like, who said I wanted him to become a striker? Maybe he has been teaching him to play out on the wings rather than being a striker, but he's got that versatility and to play either down the middle or on the wings. And I think over this past year or so, we've started to see him bulk up a little bit, which definitely helped him playing down the middle, going up against Premier League defenders that are so experienced. They know how to use their body weight, they know how to shrug a striker off, and I think there was a time about at the start of last season when he was struggling with form. There was some people were starting to ask the question: has his game been found out? But with a left foot like that and a right foot equally as good, you can't really figure out which way he's going to go. He could have easily on Saturday, he could have easily taken that ball onto his right foot and then put it in the opposite corner. He'd have been able to do that as well. I mean, it's undefendable. You can't stop that.
Nah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I don't think a player who's that young, you can't really work his game out. Because, you know what I mean, he's going to change his game in different ways. The more he grows, the more he bulks up. You know what I mean? The more he trains his left, his right foot, dropping the shoulder, his agility. I don't think you can really work someone's game out when they're that age. Not that you really can at any age, to be fair, because these footballers are such professional athletes now that it's difficult. You can maybe work out how a team's going to play and manage his tactics. But once a player's down, he's got the ball at his feet, he knows what he's doing, and it's difficult to defend against.
Exactly right. And I know it's like there's only so much we can talk about with one game, but 5 goals is something that's not necessarily unheard of in the first game of the season. But there's all some people say they're easing themselves in. The league table doesn't really start until October. You can't look at the league table till then. But 5 goals is some statement.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a statement to the rest of the club. But, I mean, we don't even have to talk about the goals. We've got so much else. Sancho, his debut. I thought you got to think he would have brought him on in front of a full stadium, in front of Old Trafford. If he didn't, what is he thinking? But thankfully he did. He came on, round of applause. To be honest, the roar he got when he got out of his seat to come and warm up was something in itself. All the fans weren't even watching the game at this point. As soon as he got the call back. And one thing that was interesting, actually, that I don't know if many people noticed this, but he was down warming up with Martial. And you saw Kieran McKenna like this. He was screaming, come back, come back. And Jadon and Anthony were stood there with each other. And you could see them having a discussion saying, pointing to each other, like, is he talking to you, talking to me? And neither of them went back. And he was stood there going like this. And then he just went and had a word with someone. Then you saw Ollie get up, come out, and he went like this. And then you saw Jadon running back. And everyone thought, this is it. Here we go. Gets stripped off, comes on. Standing ovation, incredible.
Yeah, I mean, what a way to introduce your new star player. You're already 4 goals to the good. You're 5-1 up on the opening day of the season. Sancho will have wanted to get on the score sheet, and who wouldn't? But I was actually looking forward to the prospect of Martial coming back on. and making his return, if you like, because he suffered a very, very tough injury in the middle of the season last year, and he's not played 90 minutes in over 5 months, I believe it is. And looking at the fixtures, I do kind of want to talk about the fixtures that Manchester United will be facing over the next few weeks. I think there's opportunities for Martial to make his, stake his claim that he could be contesting Mason Greenwood or Edinson Cavani when he's back. I believe Cavani will be back in training next week. He's been given the all clear, which is good. Good to see for Manchester United, and good to see for the game. Cavani's just an excellent player to watch. But over these next few fixtures, Southampton away, they were pretty poor against Everton this weekend. 3-1 loss. So I think there's goals to be had there as well. But the last trip to St Mary's was not an easy one by any means. 2-0 down at half time. That took an Edinson Cavani special to turn it around as well. So United will be hoping for something a bit different than last time out.
Yeah, completely agree. I think Anthony's a player that he comes under a lot of scrutiny. He's been at the club for a long time, and some may say that he's not come into his own yet. But he's still he's a world-class player, and you can't complain about having these players in your ranks in the club. But there is one person that I wanted to speak about who really impressed me yesterday, and that's Dan James. Obviously, you may not say that he's up there with the likes of Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes, but he's another one like Scott who wears his heart on his sleeve. And there was one moment in the game that had me shocked. And it was at the beginning of the game. Manchester United had a corner and Leeds looked to counter-attack. And Daniel James just clatters one of the Leeds players. I can't remember who it was. He wins the ball and absolutely clatters them. And I thought it was Harry Maguire. And then Dan James gets up as if he's like this, shoulders puffed out, as if he's... But what a tackle that was. I was shocked. And then he kept doing it all game, putting his body in there. And maybe one of the smallest players on the pitch, maybe apart from Fred. I could not believe it. For a winger, for an attacker, to get stuck in like that, that's what you need.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of the... it might have been even Solskjaer who said it last season. He's the best right wing back at the club because of the way he tracks back. His commitment to every game is unbelievable. But the only issue is with Daniel James, and it's been said time and time again, is we saw again his lack of quality going forward and producing. I think that's his biggest issue, is producing. He gets himself in these excellent areas. He can beat a man, he can get past a man on the wing, he can take the ball past you before you even know it's gone, because he's just so quick. But it's his end product, the amount of times we've seen over the past 2 seasons Daniel James put in a cross and it ends up in row Z, or it doesn't even beat the first man. There's so many, that's something that he needs to fix. And I remember actually Nani used to have that issue. He could beat a man, but his end product wasn't quite there, and it did come for Nani in the final years under Fergie. But he did finally fix his crossing ability and his finishing ability. So whether that happens to Daniel James, time will tell. But it's something that will be very interesting to keep your eye on, because he's got the quality to do it. It's just whether he can finalise what happens in that final third. But like you said, his commitment has always been there.
Well, before we move on to the next segment, I just wanted to quickly touch on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I was fortunate enough, I found myself in position of holding the boom mics for the interview for Bruno, for Mason, and for Ole. And Ole was just so calm. He was so relaxed. And as if it was just another day at the office. It was just another, pick up the win. It was an impressive performance, but he wasn't too fazed by it. He said, this is what I expect from my players. He said, he always talks about building the philosophy, building something good again. And I was shocked by how relaxed he was, whether or not it's because he had to do about 5 different interviews before he got to MUTV. But he was just so relaxed about the whole situation. It was incredible. Yeah,
and I think his mentality plays onto his players a bit. They won't get too carried away from this result, and rightly so. It is a long season. But Solskjaer said it himself, you don't win a trophy in September, but you sure can lose it in September. And that's what happened last season, if you remember that. United lost their opening 3 out of 6 games in the Premier League last season, and they ultimately lost the league by 12 points. So that would have taken it right down to the wire last year if they were to have started better. So this season they've definitely started on the front foot. 3 points And Manchester City have also just lost as we're recording this, so he'll be looking at that. But Manchester City had terrible form to start the season last year as well, and then they went on an unbeaten run, 22 wins in a row. But let's stick to the red side of Manchester at the minute.
Absolutely. Well, moving away from the first team, the women's, they played Aston Villa in a pre-season friendly yesterday, and they won 2-0 in that one. And the under-23s kicked off their Premier League 2 campaign against Leicester in a 2-2 draw, which Leicester are a very tough team to play in the PL2. They played them last year on the opening game of the season, and they're just a big, experienced side. And today, same again, they went 2-0 up, and people were sort of thinking, and they missed a penalty in the opening 10 minutes. Mate Kovar was absolutely fantastic in the whole game. He saved the penalty. And I'll tell you what, I'm pretty sure the attendance was 1,500, and they erupted when he made that penalty save. It was absolutely incredible. But then Damani Mella, he was back from his injuries of last season. He got on the score sheet, and then none other but Charlie McNeil came off the bench. He scored, and he also had the chance to wrap up all 3 points, but he missed the target by, a matter of inches, I'm pretty sure. And again, Neil Wood was absolutely delighted that they came away from a point with that one, because Leicester City were a fairly good team, and the 23s have got players missing them as well. There was no Hannibal, there was no Elanga. Obviously, Shoulder did feature in that game, but it's a young side as well. There's a lot of the under-18s coming through, and he touched on that. But also, Hull City legend Paul McShane is being drafted in, and he's obviously playing. He joined the under-23s as a defensive coach. But I think what they plan to do is have him feature in the defence. He was next to Bjorn Hardley, who's just come up from the under-18s. And he was so vocal into every player on the pitch, whether it was Amari Forson up top, Charlie Wellings to his right. He was telling him where to be, what to do, when to come for the ball, when to trap back. And I thought that was pretty incredible. He's, 35? And he's come to pass on his experience to these young players.
Yeah, I need to get myself down to Leeds Sports Village, to be fair. I was there a few times last season to watch the women's, and the under-23s was a little bit more hidden and kept away with no fans, etc. Their media was severely limited. But I do need to get myself down there. You always say how good it is to go and watch them and watch these young stars up and coming. And then you get to see them. I like the fact that you get to compare them when they make their debuts for the first team. You know them already. You know what types of players they are. You know that Elanga's incredibly quick and he's lightning fast off the start. But yeah, I do need to get myself down there, to be fair, and do a bit of scouting to see who Solskjaer could be potentially moving up soon.
Exactly.
But from what I can see and from what I read all the time, it's McNeil. He's the next star. 600 academy goals or something like that. I mean, over 600. Signed from Manchester City for £1 million. He's just that story alone is good enough to make Manchester United fans want to see him do well.
Absolutely, and it's free. So if you fancy a free game of football to watch the youngsters, then get yourselves down to Leeds Sports Village. But I think the best thing about that is that you get to, especially under 23s football, you get to see the personalities of the players. And I think that's one thing for a lot of fans, especially in the first team. You see these first team players and almost think that they're robots in a sense, that they're built to play football and nothing else. They're not allowed to do anything else. If they're not scoring goals, then why aren't they scoring goals? It's not always about that rather than thinking about them. But after the game, I spoke to Mate Kovar, and he's such a gentleman. He outstands me. Every time I interview him, he just shocks me even more and more by just how much of a nice guy he is. And just by wishing you a nice day and things like that. These young players, you wouldn't expect that too much of them, maybe of the older ones and things like that. But and to see what kind of head they've got on their shoulders is very important moving forward to the future.
Yeah, it's the United way. That's what the film will teach you anyway. Which is a great
Exactly.
film, by the way. Have you seen it?
I have, yeah. I think the opening feature of that, you can see my flat, which is very interesting. Where it pans, whether or not I'm pretty sure it is the United way. It pans over sort of the Salford Quays, and then you can see, unfortunately, I'm not stood out on the balcony. Yeah, you must have missed that day.
Keep your blinds closed when they're filming, eh?
Well, I think it's time for the questions. It's nice to have people getting involved, and thank you very much for tweeting your questions to Brad, and we can get started with them if you like.
Yeah, let's get into it.
First up, we've got from Johnny. a defensive midfielder away from domination. Now, this is a very interesting one because we did touch on it kind of earlier with Fred Mctominay, and last week, to be fair, mentioning Goretzka and the likes of that. But I'm interested to see what you have to say about this.
Yeah, I think, the word domination is a very strong word for one more signing. Because that question hints at one more signing away from domination, and in my opinion, domination means winning the double, winning the treble, or the quadruple, which seems to be talked about all the time, although it's never happened, which is a odd topic that seems to come up all the time. But domination, defensive midfielder away from domination, I wouldn't say so. I would say the likes of Manchester City are a striker / left back away from domination. I don't think Manchester United are quite up to that task yet. A defensive midfielder would definitely, I think, boost their hopes of Champions League success, and it would prove vital in the later stages of competitions when sweeping up that ball, doing the N'Golo Kante role. You see how important he is in Chelsea's massive games. We saw it in the Champions League time after time last year. We saw it in the Leicester City year of just unbelievable results. And Kante was, I said it a couple minutes ago. It's the role that goes missing, but it's so pivotal in preventing attacks and then starting them. But a defensive midfielder away from domination, not quite yet. I don't think that's a fair assessment. I think United are still quite far away from domination.
Well, you see, so I'm an optimistic person, and that's where I do obviously domination is a strong word, and it is a very strong word. But I just get this feeling that maybe not even a defensive midfielder away, but obviously let's not get carried away. It's early in the season, but give it a few games, maybe sign a defensive midfielder in January. And just if we're in a position where we're still in everything in January and with the quadruples on, then who knows? But who would you take in that position? Because obviously a defensive midfielder has changed. That role has changed. You speak about, you used to think defensive midfielder is like you picture someone like Matic. He's big, he's strong, he's good on the ball, he's more defensive than he is anything else. Whereas nowadays, you look at Kante, he's probably the best at that in the world. And he's small, he's quick, tiny. He's nimble. He's almost, you have the ball next minute, you don't even see him, but he's off with the ball. He's gone with it. That's how quick, and the roles changed so much that it almost makes you think that what would be best suited to this Manchester United team? Would it be a midfielder like Fred? Maybe a bit like, you look at Modric, I know he's getting on a little bit, but he's a similar player in that position. Or do you look at someone who, like we had Schweinsteiger? He's a good person to have in that position. There's so many different. It's not just a defensive midfielder role anymore, is it? It's so much more than just that. But that's a good question.
Certainly is. Or is the answer already sitting on their bench? Donny van de Beek.
Well, exactly.
Who knows?
Exactly. Who knows? Well, on to the next. So Ashley has said that consistency is an issue from last season, saying that we can thrash one team and play poor and lose the next. But can we expect better consistency this season? I want to go first in this one and say yes, because of the players that we've signed and the depth that we spoke about on last week's podcast. I would like to think that, yes, consistency obviously is key, and that's what everyone looks for in a football club. But I can see that happening. And he's compared, said City and Chelsea maybe are better than us in that aspect, which is a good point. And I think at certain times, but I also think that it's important to win certain batches of games within a season. Obviously, Christmas is a major one. You mentioned the start of the season is another major one. And I think you said when you mentioned Man City had not the best start last year and went on a 22 winning streak. But that was still, I know it didn't end that close, but for times you thought that, a title race might be on here. But if you can win the games where other teams drop points, then that consistency sort of links up without you realising it. It doesn't have to be WWWWW, but if you can go 10, 15 games without losing, then that consistency sort of builds on itself.
Yeah, I think you've spoken everything true to it there. I think consistency can build on itself. Can it happen this year for Manchester United? have they got enough depth in the areas that they require consistency? Centre back they now have depth, and that will prove to see more consistent results. I think they need another right back to contest Darren Wan-Bissaka to prove consistency, because there was times last season where his form would go on and off, not just going forward but also defensively. Most famously, I think, was that RB Leipzig performance of last year when they were knocked out in the Champions League. That was a very shoddy performance by Wan-Bissaka that night. But I think consistency, they will have more of it this season. It's just whether everyone can stay fit. That's the key to every consistent side is having an injury-free season, really. United have been lucky with injuries, touch wood, so far for Manchester United. They've been okay on the injury front, especially when you look at Liverpool's injury luck last year. That was just horrendous to see. I would expect United to show more consistent results, and not get stuck on the side of things where the creativity is lacking, because they've got those options now. And they're not just relying on Bruno Fernandes. They've got others up top to create, and I think Sancho will be a big help to that.
Absolutely, I agree. So moving on to the next one. This one struck me. I did see this one on Twitter, and it did get me thinking a little bit. And I think you kind of touched on this one as well. But Jacob said, do we need to play 4-3-3 with one holding midfielder, given how well Scott and Fred play together?
Yeah, we did really discuss this, didn't we? But I do think at the minute this Manchester United side is so comfortable with the 4-2-3-1 because of how quickly it can shape up in a 4-2-4. The opportunity to adapt to a 4-2-3-1 when Fernandes does need to drop back, or when you want to go after the game to change it into a 4-2-4 is just very interlinks quite nicely. But a 4-3-3, I don't think Fernandes would be as critical to United's attack. And I think we actually saw a glimpse of what Fernandes would look like in a 4-3-3 when he was playing for Portugal. He didn't look anywhere near like the United Bruno Fernandes that everyone knows, and I think that was partly down to where he was playing. He was playing on the right of a midfield three, and I just don't see it working at the minute. It was rumoured to happen, didn't happen, and I don't think there will be too many changes this season to the formation.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think you hit the nail on the head with the word adapt. Football's all about, you got to be in one shape when you're attacking, but you got to be in a better shape when you're defending and winning the ball back. But it got me thinking earlier on, before you mentioned Pogba playing on the left, I was trying to work out where you'd fit all the players in if you did play 4-3-3 and obviously kept Scott and Fred in that midfield together. Then you struggle to get the likes of Pogba, Fernandes, as well as your attacking trio as well.
Yeah.
So, and you got Donny. There's a lot of players, and as well, I think why change if it's working? Why change it?
Yeah.
Until it maybe doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
If it keeps going, then who knows for the future. So Matt is the next question. He said, which 3 strikers should be on the shortlist for United next summer?
3 strikers. Haaland speaks for itself. Realistic targets, Haaland. Unrealistic, Mbappe. Wouldn't everyone want Mbappe in their squad? But I think just talking about Haaland, I do think United have received a little bit of a transfer boost in a way, because there's not many teams out there who, if Manchester City get Harry Kane, there's not any other team that would suit Haaland, if that sounds right, than Manchester United, because Chelsea have got their man Lukaku. Real Madrid are putting all their eggs in one basket in Mbappe. PSG now have Messi. If Mbappe was to go, maybe they could go for Haaland, but they've taken quite the financial hit by signing Messi for 2 years. Arsenal don't have the funds for that. Liverpool won't put the funds in for that sort of signing, and he's already said multiple times he doesn't want to go to Bayern Munich, even though Bayern Munich's director of football has come out and said how many times they want to sign him. I think there's no other place for him than Manchester United, but it's just whether that can actually happen. And 3 strikers who are realistic signings. I think Marco Silva for AC Milan has been superb, but have Manchester United already got that sort of player? A small, nifty, quick striker in Martial and Greenwood. They might already have that sort of player. What they don't have is what they'd already let go in Lukaku, being able to hold up the ball, playing it out wide. I'm not saying it was a wrong decision to get rid of Lukaku, because I think the way United play now doesn't suit his game, whereas Haaland is kind of the better of both, is a mix of both Lukaku and Haaland because of how quick he is, as well as being strong. So I think it's a no-brainer. It's got to be Haaland. They've got to go all out for him next year.
No, it's interesting that you said Haaland is a realistic signing, which obviously he is. I completely agree with you, but that sentence in itself it makes me laugh, because he's a world-class player, and because he's a realistic signing with the team that they're building now. He's incredible. And obviously, I was having this chat to the boys in the studio yesterday, actually. We were talking about where Mbappe will go next. And I feel like Spain, Italy, they're no longer the leagues that can attract these big players. Spain especially, because Real Madrid and Barca ruled for a lot of years. If you're a world-class player, you'd either be being unveiled as a Real Madrid player or a Barcelona player. There wasn't much option other than obviously the Premier League would take them. But now I think Premier League's, well, it's always been the best league in the world, don't get me wrong, but now there's no one else really contending with it. No. And I think Mbappe, I understand that he probably will go to Real Madrid, whereas I could see him maybe at the likes of Liverpool and things like that, maybe in the future. But in terms of three strikers for Manchester United, I wouldn't even say there is three. I think Haaland's got to be the one if they are going to pursue one in the future, because obviously we're in no shortage of attackers at the moment, are we? Signing Sancho, we've got Edison, we've got Martial, we've got Greenwood, Alanga, Marcus. So yeah, interesting. See what next summer says. But how long has Edison got left? Is he got another year after this one, or is this his last one? Maybe negotiation for another one.
Yeah, I was gonna actually talk about that just very, very quickly, because I know we're coming to an end. But Cavani, he has got that 1 year extension. But you've got to feel like the signing of Cavani is not necessarily, Cavani is his own player. He is proving his worth every time he steps onto that pitch for Manchester United. But you've got to feel he is a stepping stone to the striker Manchester United want. Whether they are just saving up the money, whether they are waiting for the right time. And that right time might come next summer with Haaland's release clause being activated, essentially. I think it's around the 70 to 80 million mark he can leave Borussia Dortmund next year for, which would be a steal. He's going to have 6 or 7 clubs come in after him, but it's the agent fees that are going to cost so much, and whether United is saving up for that, I don't know, but they'll go for him next season. They have to go for him. 2
questions left, and Will's said this about Greenwood and Cavani, which we've kind of talked about in the different positions, whether Greenwood's a versatile forward and things like that. But he does mention De Gea or Henderson, and after De Gea's performance yesterday, he's not done much wrong to be taken out of the team, has he?
No, certainly hasn't, and it happened vice versa last year. When De Gea went away for his birth of his child, and Henderson came in and had some great performances, and De Gea ended up starting in the Europa League final. So I think I don't even think Solskjaer knows which one he wants to start if they were both fit. Unfortunately Henderson is still recovering from the effects of COVID-19, which it sounds really bad. It's been over a month now. Well, I think just under a month. Sorry, he's actually, since he had the virus, so that's not good. Not a good sign at all, because we know how much it can affect people in the long term. Because it's called long COVID. Is it something like that? And that's seeming to really affect him, and he's not there at the minute. But Tom Heaton as well on the bench. He's more than a capable goalkeeper. But for me, at the minute, I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would prefer to have Dean Henderson in between the 2 goalposts because of his age. I think we discussed this on the last episode. Because of his age, you want to keep him happy, don't you? You don't want to upset your young up and coming talent in a goalkeeper that you could have for 10-15.
Well, Will, hope that answered your question. And to finish on a bit of a pessimistic question, so this is probably perfect to you, to be fair. But if Ole doesn't win a major trophy by the end of the season, should he leave/be sacked, says Reese? And I want to just quickly start by saying absolutely not.
Yes,
over to you.
I mean, yes, I'm with you as well. I don't think he should be sacked, but sacked with no trophy. I mean, I don't think it could happen, but who knows? This is Manchester United, who sacked Louis van Gaal the day after winning the FA Cup. So crazier things have happened. But I don't see it happening to Solskjaer. I think the club and the board understand this project Solskjaer's talking about. He signed a 3-year deal. I think they know he's the man going forward, and they're ready to put all of their eggs in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's basket.
You see, that is interesting because Reece has said, should he be sacked, which I disagreed with that he should, but whether or not he will is a different question, like you just said there. But yeah, I say that's a good question to finish it is with, really. So I hope you enjoyed the second episode of Your Manchester United Fix. Get involved, tweet us at Your Man United Fix. Listen to us on Spotify, subscribe to us on YouTube. We'll be back this time next week with episode 3.